Hi, this is Emma at the Vlog Lady, and today I'm going to be doing another Twin Peaks video, quelle surprise, but I'm going to be looking at a theory that I've called the car theory. It's in part a theory, I guess, and in part just looking at how cars are symbolized within season 3 or The Return, and it's something that I noticed when I was watching The Return. I think that this aspect in particular would be easy to overlook if you're just a casual viewer, but on my rewatch I couldn't help but notice that the delivery and the direction were often arranged to expose the car as an important factor in the series. After discovering this, I then googled a bit, had a look at some of the forums, the Dugpa forum, Reddit, Twin Peaks forums, and there was some other fans who had picked up on this, and there have been some articles written as well with reference to the use of cars in Twin Peaks as well as David Lynch's other works. So I think that's really where we have to start with this, by looking at how David Lynch as the director has used cars in his other bodies of work. I have to say that in regards to Mark Frost, I'm not as familiar with his work, and I also think that this aspect of the use of cars is probably typically a Lynchian thing. So basically, if you think about some of David Lynch's past films, cars are often used. In Wild at Heart, for example, we have Sailor and using the car to escape, using the car as a mode of freedom. We also see a car crash in Wild at Heart, in which Sherilyn Fenn's character is horribly injured. We have a very important scene in Blue Velvet in which Kyle MacLachlan's character is trapped in the car with a psychopath, basically. Lost Highway, cars are used quite a lot. Notably the car chase where Mr. Eddie chases down a tailgater and pummels him in the face. In Mulholland Drive, a car accident is the starting point for the dream world. You could explain this away as the fact that we live in a modern world, we live in the 21st century, and cars are very symbolic of the technology that we've produced. The cars are often representative of our own affluence, I think, and they are often used as a status symbol. Particularly in America, I think cars are very important. You can drive from a very early age. From my perspective as a British person, from what I've seen represented on television and how I've heard Americans speak, it seems like to be without a car is an unusual thing. I'm referencing a Vice article now, and it says that there are more cars in the USA than anywhere else in the world. And of course, this article refers to the idea of the car as a freedom vehicle, spiritual representation of what America is, Route 66, drive-in movie theaters, materialism, consumerism. All of these things tie in with the image of the car and what it represents. I think as a casual viewer, if you watch The Return, that it's easy enough to not notice that cars are used in any form, or that cars are being referred to in a way that might be significant. But I think that if you take a look at it again, then it's almost impossible to deny that there is something that's being relayed to us as an audience, that the writer and director are trying to make a point. So if you start to look at the reasons why this might be, you have to look at David Lynch's personality. David Lynch has actually openly spoken about cars and what they mean to him in interviews, and he has said that, let me quote, "Transcendental meditation is like a car, a vehicle that allows you to go within. It's a mental technique." So he associates the car with the idea of diving within, diving inside your mind and soul, becoming familiar with your own identity, with your own being. He has also been very open about the fact that he watches nothing but car shows on the television, and this obviously must influence him. His tastes are that he enjoys cars. And he has mentioned something about the design of cars and how I think from what I read is that he prefers a classic car design and didn't like the subsequent changes that took place when cars were redesigned to suit the times. So in that sense, he seems to be looking at cars as an art form, and as an artist, I think that's plausible. He also has associated the birth of the car as being connected to the optimism of America, the burgeoning spirit of the strong America that he really supports and desires. So here are a few examples of when cars were used in a significant way or mentioned in Twin Peaks: The Return. I wish I could use clips here, unfortunately I can't for copyright reasons, so I will just use pictures. So I think that cars are used in different ways in Twin Peaks. The Vice article that I mentioned before, which I'll link to below, actually refers to the idea that David Lynch was affected by a car crash that killed his friend when he was a young boy or teenager. There is no evidence to confirm that, but if it's true, then that could have had a significant effect on how he sees cars and why he sometimes uses cars as objects of horror in his works. So in Twin Peaks: The Return, we do have instances where the car is involved in an unpleasant moment. So we have, for instance, Richard killing the child with his car. We have the car that was rigged to blow up. We have Mr. C's car crash. We have that horrible incident where the little boy shoots a gun from the window of his car and it goes into the diner. Then we have a moment of road rage with the woman and the sick girl. I think it's worth noting that the statistics show that car crashes are responsible for as many deaths in America as guns are. I don't think it's uncommon to have known someone who might have been involved in a crash or who might have been hurt or killed. I think that many people have a lingering fear of being in a car crash because it's something that is statistically likely to happen, more likely to be hurt in a car crash than in other ways. And it's always hanging over your head. The idea of this amazing moment of freedom and enjoyment that can turn to such horror in just moments, that is a horror movie moment. And in that sense, you can understand why cars are used in this way. I think also in Twin Peaks: The Return that certain characters who are involved in these scenes of darkness, such as Richard, the car becomes an extension of themselves, I guess. Richard uses the car to express his rage and anger and arrogance over the fact that he's been snubbed by Red and been humiliated by him. And there's that moment when he's thumping the car, and he's really thumping himself because he's angry at himself that he allowed himself to be spoken to like a little kid. The car is also used by the woman who has the sick child in that scene with the gun, and she's honking on the horn because she's so impatient. So the car becomes her method of communication, her way of saying that she's impatient and communicating that there is something desperately wrong in her car as well. And there might also be something to the idea that the little boy, he comes across like a little cowboy. In the olden days, they would have horses, they would ride on horseback with guns, and now they have cars with guns. So moving on to think about how cars are used in other ways in Twin Peaks: The Return. For instance, let's look at Mr. C's car crash as he's driving. That's the first thing that Agent Cooper sees when the curtains are opened from the lodge. He looks down, he sees the car on the highway in the desert. That scene in itself, the car driving alone in that desert, I think it says a lot about man and the natural world clashing, and it looks beautiful. I mean, there is nothing you can say to deny that the fact that a beautiful car driving down the middle of an empty desert, it looks artful. We have some interesting moments inside of Mr. C's car when the little cigarette lighter is acting as a conductor of energy and is connected to the lodges. We have awareness of the actual elements of the car, the scientific elements of metals and electrics and everything else that's making up that car, everything else that is the expression of that machine. I think these aspects are noticed in this moment. The scene ends violently with Mr. C crashing the car, and of course it's a hellishly violent moment, and one which makes us probably think about mortality. So as we progress through the return, there seems to be more and more scenes which refer to cars in a way which makes it undeniable that there is a connection to the theme, the overall theme. So one scene we have is Jesse, the sheriff's department, interrupting Sheriff Truman and Hawk in a very obvious way. He sticks his body through the door, and just everything about how that scene's set up, the way that he presents himself, the way that the moment occurs, suggests that this statement is to be taken as more as just a joke, because it does play out as a joke. He does ask Sheriff Truman if he would like to see his new car. If we are looking at cars as representative of the self, then perhaps Jesse, as a young man, feels he is progressing in the world, feels very confident in life. It possibly suggests that he's also trying to buy respect from his elders in the workplace and personally, by revealing this wonderful car that he has. We also have Jerry Horn shouting that he thinks his car has been stolen, and he says this when he's in a state where he is drugged. And again, if we look at cars as being representative of the self, then he is merely suggesting that he doesn't feel himself, that he feels as if he's lost a part of himself. And of course it also ties in with the plot as well. So at the time there is some inference that the car that has been stolen may be the one that Richard uses in the hit and run crime. One scene that really interested me and intrigues me, and I love to watch it, is the scene of Candy in the restaurant when the Mitchum brothers are attempting to make her speak, make her respond. She is in dreamland basically. She is asked to speak, and when she does, it's almost a kind of performance, and she says this line about there being cars up and down the strip, and she says it in a way, in a kind of wonderment, as if she's never seen cars before, as if this is the first time that she's ever seen this kind of technology, as if it's just a different world. And that raises a lot of questions about who Candy is, what has she been doing, what does that mean. And I have read a lot of theories about people thinking that Candy might embody Laura, or might be some kind of spirit from the lodge who has come out into the real world. There are a lot of other theories as well about that scene, but it's definitely weird, and it's definitely a moment that stands out, I think. I mean, she talks about Las Vegas, and we see in another scene a car driving in Las Vegas. It's a very cinematic shot of the car that is transporting Agent Cooper to meet the Mitchum brothers, and we have Viva Las Vegas playing over the top, and that again is like, look at this glorious world of money and freedom, and all of these things are contributing to what the identity is of both America and of individuals in America. So it ties in with kind of Wally Brando's speech in an amusing kind of way, because Wally Brando says, the road is my dharma. Wally Brando was tapping into that 1950s, 1960s ideology that the road is representative of a spiritual journey, in a Kerouacian sense. Cars and the road go hand in hand, wheel on asphalt. So lastly, I'm going to address two significant scenes involving cars in Twin Peaks: The Return, and that is the scene with Cooper and Diane. They get in the car and they travel to this Odessa world, and we see them in the car for a long time. There isn't much dialogue, so you know, there feels like there's a lot of space to think and feel and just contemplate things, reflect on things. And there is a moment when they pass into the Odessa world where the car and their bodies become alive with electricity. It's also worth noting that the car changes after Cooper and Diane make love. Cooper then uses this car as a way to find Laura Palmer. He does so in a way that suggests he knows that Laura exists, where she is, where she might be, at least that she definitely exists in this time and place. He eventually finds Carrie Page, they get into a car, and at this point I think we see a very, very long driving sequence. Now, again, there is virtually no dialogue. Again, I think this is a scene where these two characters have a lot of time to think things through, to process whatever is happening to them. It seems to be that the car represents a space to grow, to move, to feel, to learn, and we get this strange moment of, it feels to me when Carrie Page says this thing about having a clean house, that she's almost confessing, that she's saying something that you might say to a psychiatrist or something if you were asked to reveal something about yourself. It feels like she's saying something very deep. And of course, while they're in the car, we have this very paranoid sense that there is someone following them. We have the car headlights which appear again and again, and so in this sense the cars are so there is a sense that there is a threat from the vehicle behind, whoever is in that vehicle. But again, the vehicle is a very important part of the equation. The car takes us where we end the story of Twin Peaks, and we spend so long in that car before we reach the destination of Twin Peaks. It's implausible that that has no meaning. That those scenes are arranged like that for a reason. We have so much time in the car with these two characters for a reason. So one of my interpretations of the scene is that Carrie and Cooper are two characters who are in a state of awakening and learning, and that this time in the car allows them to progress to a place where that moment at the end happens. I think that whether we interpret the end as positive or negative, and I know that many people have different views on what the ending means, I think that the journey to get there is just as important and should be taken into account when formulating a theory about what Twin Peaks means. I'm sure that there are lots of other connections that I haven't thought of in relation to what cars mean in Twin Peaks: The Return, and if you have any ideas, you can leave them in the comments below. I love to read them because I just find it really fascinating, to be honest. I think it's very clever, very clever. Thank you for watching today. You can subscribe to my channel if you like this video. You can also watch my other Twin Peaks videos. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheVlogLady as well. Until next time, bye!